Chapter 26-32. Like Earth, Namek was blue and green. Somehow that made it feel welcoming. The air smelled salty and grassy and intensely fresh, and the place Gine and MasakoX had landed was still with a profound quiet. It would have been the perfect place to ease her fears of going back to space. Except Vegeta was already here. And he was fighting her family. Without a glance at MasakoX, Gine shot into the air from the entrance to the ship and flew toward the cluster of energy signatures. Chi-Chi and Krillin and Yamcha were powered up, their energy strangely brighter than it had been, but it was Gohan Vegeta was fighting. Gine put on extra speed, MasakoX only inches behind her. They cleared the last ridge of rocky outcroppings in time to see Vegeta kick Gohan viciously in the stomach. Everything shrank down to that single moment, the boy folding nearly in half as the air was ejected from his lungs, Vegeta's nasty grin as he witnessed his handiwork, and even though Gine was traveling at supernatural speeds it felt like she wasn't moving at all. Then she blinked and she was there. Her foot slammed into Vegeta's face with every ounce of her power, speed, and righteous fury behind it. The prince plowed into the earth, sending up a spray of soil and grass. Distantly Gine was aware that MasakoX was holding Gohan, that Chi-Chi was yelling something, that Gohan was crowing victoriously despite having been beaten half to death, but all she could think about through the tunnel of her rage was that she had just drop-kicked the prince of all Scions in the face. At the end of the furrow of earth, Vegeta sat up, shaking the soil from his hair and the fog from his brain. Slowly he rose into the air, touching down on the first solid piece of ground he came to. He was staring at her in something like amazement. He looked the way Gine felt. Well, he said, look who just sealed their fate. And he held out his palm and sent an artificial moon streaking into the sky. Absently, Gine took out her sunglasses, a strange emptiness blooming in her chest. Vegeta stared up at the moon with a feral grin on his face, which began to lengthen and grow. MasakoX said, I guess I'll take care of him, Ma, and she realized the emptiness was where her fear would be. Vegeta was nothing compared to her. It almost wouldn't process. A prince of the royal house of Vegeta, especially this prince, was supposed to be the strongest. It was part of what made him royalty in the first place. And Vegeta 4 was a prodigy, rumored to be the legendary himself reborn after 1,000 years. His sheer power was unparalleled by any Scion, before or since. But MasakoX, having handed Gohan off to Chi-Chi, stood impatiently and waited for Vegeta to finish transforming, because otherwise what was the point? Gine had known, though she hadn't paid attention to it, that she and MasakoX were growing stronger. Every day they'd inched the gravity up higher and higher, waiting to see when it would become too much for them. It hadn't happened. She'd begun to wonder if it ever would. But even knowing that, she hadn't been prepared for the ultimate yardstick to lay itself down beside her and come up that short. Vegeta had double the power he'd had on Earth and it still meant nothing. Transformed, of course, he was stronger than her. The Great Ape transformation was feared throughout the galaxy for a reason. Even MasakoX's power was dwarfed, but Gine wasn't worried. Her son stepped forward and shouted, and in an instant centuries of Scion class distinctions were proven meaningless. He'd tried teaching her the Kaioken on the trip here, but it had come to nothing. The technique was too advanced to be learned in a week. His offhanded assurances that she just needed a little more practice had grated on her nerves, even he had needed months to master it. And he'd progressed even further with it in the last 6 days. Already he was starting off at 2 times his own strength, and he pushed it up to 3 with no effort after throwing the first punch. He'd had to leap the height of a building to land it, but land it did, Vegeta not so much rocking back with the force of it as flinching at the piercing blow. A fist the size of a grasshopper striking with the force of an army would punch pin-sized tunnels straight through a person's head. The only reason Vegeta wasn't instantly killed was because of his admittedly impressive ki control. Gohan bounded up to Gine, throwing his arms around her waist. She tousled his hair and gave him a once-over to make sure the Senzu bean had done its job, but both of them turned without speaking to watch MasakoX, spellbound. Seeing a normal-sized person fighting a giant ape was visually absurd, but even more absurd to Gine was the enormity of MasakoX's power. He was controlling himself enough that the landscape around them was only mildly trembling, but she could feel the full weight of his power like a star leaning against her soul. Vegeta's power, by contrast, was unfocused and blurry, and he seemed to be moving through molasses as he tried to catch the tiny figure bouncing circles around him. Gine didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The Oozuru transformation had been the Scion's greatest weapon, yes, but Gine could still remember echoes from her childhood, legends told around campfires and old-timers spinning tales in the pub, that gave it a deeper meaning. According to the old beliefs, it was a sign from the gods that the Scion race was destined to conquer the galaxy. The arrival of the Cold Dynasty had thrown that into question, but even in Gine's time there had been a belief at the base of every Scion's soul that they were special, and that what made them special was the great ape inside them, waiting only for the moon to bring it forth. Watching an untransformed Scion not just going toe-to-toe with an Oozuru, but dispatching it easily, gave Gine a jarring sense of unreality that had her gripping Gohan's shoulders out of more than just relief. In a matter of seconds the absolute pinnacle of Scion achievement lay bloodied on the ground, Kakarot standing uncertainly over him like a dog that has actually managed to catch his own tail and now doesn't know what to do with it. He looked over at her with a question in his eyes that Gine did not know how to answer. She felt someone step up beside her. It was Krillin. "Ma'am, do you mind if I?" He called up a Kienzan and jerked his head toward Vegeta. It took her a second to realize what he was getting at, but when she did she nodded firmly. "Please," she said. Krillin flicked his wrist expertly, and the spinning razor disc of light arced toward Vegeta's prone form and sliced cleanly through his tail. Instantly he began to shrink, moaning in agony, though Gine knew it was not pain that was tormenting him. Cutting off his tail was probably the most humiliating thing they could do to the prince. Being killed would be less galling. A Scion who lost his tail was hardly a Scion at all, and now the one thing that put Vegeta, alone among Scions, in the rankings with the likes of Frisia's private guard, was gone. Gine found it a fitting end. "You scum!" Vegeta was screaming, but he was screaming it from the ground, bloodied and terrified. "I'll kill you. I'll kill every last one of you. How dare you? Grandma, you're here," Gohan said, bouncing up and down. He was ignoring the prince, along with everyone else. "I have so much to tell you. Oh, but first I want you to meet." He choked. Gine felt something electric slide down her spine. The others all felt it too, and in tandem every head turned toward the sky, in the direction of the 5 enormous powers that had just entered the system. "Who is?" Chi-Chi whispered. "That," said Vegeta, standing gingerly, his queasy grin shining with the light of madness, "is the Ginyu Force. And they're here to kill you." Gine stared up at the sky with the rest of her family, horror warring with shock. Why were the Ginyus here? Did they know about her? Had they come to finish the job Frisia started? Behind her Vegeta was cackling. "You pathetic low-class scum. You really thought you could win, didn't you? You're in for it now. I only wonder why it took them so long to show up." Gine turned slowly around, pushing Gohan gently but firmly away from her. She fixed the prince with an incredulous glare. "Are you implying," she said evenly, "that the Ginyus are here for you?" It was possible, just possible, that things had changed in the 20-odd years she'd been away from the Frisia force, but the flash of hesitation on Vegeta's face told her they hadn't. "You cowardly liar," she said, almost wonderingly. Vegeta flushed. This spineless nothing was the heir to the nightmare of her childhood. This was what she'd spent an entire year dreading. This was why Tien and Kaiatsu and Kami were dead. She was no longer afraid of him, hadn't been for a while, but now she was just disappointed. She also realized something. They are here for you, aren't they? They don't even know about us, how could they? They're here to bring you back, or kill you, and you're sitting there lying about it to save your own skin for an extra 5 minutes. How shameful. Vegeta leaped to his feet, snarling, but the sight no longer held any terror for her. He was weaker than her, in every sense of the word. In the space where her dread of him had been, a new emotion began to seep, something black and heady. "I can't believe you can stand there and call yourself a Scion when you can't even face your own death without mewling like a babe. What were you going to do when they landed? Try and bluff your way out of that too? What would your father think?" He struck her. Well, he tried to. His face contorted in slow motion, his shoulder tensing as he lifted his arm to bring it down on her cheek. Easily, like snatching a floating handkerchief out of the air, Gine reached up and caught it. His hand cracked as it impacted. Her sunglasses slipped down, and she fixed him with a stare she'd given Kakarot more than once throughout his childhood, though he had never deserved it as much as the prince did now. It had never affected Kakarot as much as it did the prince either. He stared back at her, eyes wide, quailing in her grip. It fed something inside her, that look. No one had ever looked at her that way before, like they needed to keep their eyes on her in case she did something, like she was a predator and they were the prey. Like she was dangerous. "You talk like you're hot stuff, but every single one of those buffoons could kill you without a thought. I could kill you without a thought. I used to think you were special, Vegeta. Your power level at birth was higher than mine as an adult. And yet here we are. She squeezed his hand and ground the bones together so hard they splintered. He gave a strangled cry, staring at her in abject horror. Call me a worthless low class again. Say it like you mean it, you filthy liar. Could a low class do this? And she headbutted him. Like a mother does her child when she is at her last nerve, when they will not be reasonable and respond to lesser forms of violence. Vegeta fell backwards, landing directly on his stump. He screamed, high-pitched and involuntary. His eyes were still on her, though they were watering with pain. He could not seem to look away, and neither could Gine. Ma! It was Chi-Chi. Without turning her head away from Vegeta. Gine looked at her daughter-in-law out of the corner of her eye. The girl looked fierce, but also appalled. She was trying to turn Gohan's head away, though he was fighting her. If Gine had been standing on green grass under a blue sky, she would have been just as appalled. This level of violence had no place in the life she was trying to build for herself deep in the woods of Mtipauzu. But she wasn't on Mtipauzu. She was on her old stomping grounds now, and this was how things worked out here. It was only the wide eyes of her grandson watching her that made her step back and take a deep, settling breath. Gohan, get your mother and the others to safety. It's better if the genius don't know you're here. She thought they would make objections. Offer to stay and help out. But Chi-Chi, Yamcha and Krillin all looked worse for wear, and they were staring at her like they didn't recognize her. Gohan nodded, and turned to the others. Let's go. Bulma is probably getting worried by now. Alright, Yamcha agreed belatedly. The four of them flew away. Gine turned back to Vegeta, who was still watching her warily. What does the Ginyu Force want with you, Vegeta? To kill me, probably, Vegeta sneered. I got tired of being Frieza's lackey and he must have sent them after me. That made it sound like his being on Namek had nothing to do with the Earthlings, which Gine found hard to believe. She narrowed her eyes. Why are you here? The same reason you're here, I imagine, he said airily. Gine felt an unpleasant jolt as she realized she didn't even know if the original mission had succeeded. She hadn't seen a single Namekian on her way here. What if this had all been for nothing? Her dark musings were interrupted by 5 pods streaking through the sky to land not 10 yards from where they stood. From each pod emerged a figure, some small, some large. They floated up from their respective craters and landed in front of the 3 Scions. The 5 figures loomed, menacing, energy boiling off them like steam. Then, one by one, they thrust their bodies into bizarre poses, forming a tableau as they sounded off. Rikum. Berter. Jees. Goldo. Jinyu. Jees broke pose for a moment to press a button on his boombox, and tinny music started to play as they flung themselves into final position. Together we make, the Ginyu Force. Gine had never met the Ginyu Force in person, but their reputation was as big as their power levels. Rumors abounded about them, some absurd, some mundane, all terrifying. Bardock had taken great pleasure in dispelling the ones that weren't true, but there were some he had confirmed. Gine kept her eye on Goldo. Vegeta muttered a curse behind her. Jinyu straightened from his pose and turned to face them. I knew you'd gone rogue, Vegeta, but it seems you have a whole little insurrection going. I didn't think you had the balls. Well, no matter. He turned to his men. Who wants first dibs on the riffraff? Vegeta, obviously, is mine. Ah, Captain. Berter whined. Rikum chimed in. You got the best part last time, too. It's not fair. Goldo objected. Jinyu rolled his eyes. Very well. I am a generous fellow. Play Rochambeau for it, and the runner-up gets first pick of the others. Share nicely, now. They set about their game, voices raised in banter and teasing as they ignored the 3 of them entirely. Kakarot caught Gine's eye and gave her a raised eyebrow. What the heck, Ma? She shook her head at him. Behind her she could hear Vegeta grinding his teeth. He probably knew even better than her how much the genius liked to play with their food. Ah, damn it. Goldo swore. He'd gotten 3rd place. Gine was pretty sure that meant fighting her. Berter slapped him on the back. Don't complain, man. At least you get to fight. Goldo rolled all 4 of his eyes and stepped forward, cracking his neck. Gine, seeing an opening and without any input whatsoever from her brain, raised her palm and let loose a thundering column of energy that engulfed Goldo and sent gusts of wind whipping around the plain. When the dust settled there was only a smoking corpse where Goldo had once stood. Something crackled through Gine's skin, and she gave a full body shiver and lowered her arm. Ma, what? Kakarot was staring at her, horrified. She realized she was baring her teeth, and with effort she drew her lips back down. Why, you killed him? Yes, Kakarot, I did, she said, never once taking her eyes off the rest of the Ginyu force. But he didn't even. If word gets back to Frisia about us, we're dead. What the hell? Jis was saying. Captain, what the hell just happened? That. It. Goldo must have let his guard down, Ginyu said reluctantly. Rikum, looks like you get your chance early. Rikum stepped forward, grinning. Gine felt Kakarot still looking at her. These guys work for Frisia? He asked. She nodded. Before Rikum could do more than strike a pose, Kakarot had elbowed him in the gut so hard he fell over where he stood. Ginyu gaped. What the? Jis, Birder, do something. The two of them looked down at Rikum's body, then up at Kakarot in horror, but quickly they shook themselves and rushed forward. Together, Gine and Kakarot rushed to meet them. 3 seconds later they lay dead on the ground as well. Ginyu looked around at the scattered bodies of his former squad in disbelief. How, you? Then his eyes narrowed. I get it, he said, stepping over the bodies of his men. You lot are raising your battle power for a fraction of an instant, just as you strike. A scouter wouldn't be able to pick that up. I admit, it's a clever trick. He grinned. But make no mistake, you aren't the only ones with tricks. He looked down his nose at the two of them. Unlike my late colleagues, I am not entirely reliant on my scouter for information about my opponents. I estimate your battle power to be about 50,000, madam, he said to Gine. Quite respectable for a scion. He turned to Kakarot. As for you, I'd say you're around 95,000. I'd almost be tempted to recruit both of you for my squad since I currently have openings. But I think it's a little late for that. Jinyu's smile turned hard for a moment. Neither of you have scouters, so I'll spare you the agony of wondering and tell you my top power is 120,000. Even as strong as you are, you're no match for me. Luckily for you, I haven't had a good fight in ages. He rushed Kakarot, elbowing him in the face. Kakarot flew backward, but righted himself in midair, ducking under Jinyu's swipe as he appeared behind him. They exchanged blows, neither landing a solid hit, and then Kakarot rocketed up into the air, Jinyu right behind him. Kakarot attempted to line up a key shot, but Jinyu dodged and shot one of his own, which Kakarot also dodged. They met in midair and exchanged more blows before leaping apart, both of them breathing hard. Alright, you're better than I thought, Jinyu admitted. But please do me the courtesy of not holding back, and I will do the same. I thought that couldn't be all you had, Kakarot said. Alright, I'll fight at full strength, since you asked so nicely. But you're going to wish you hadn't. Raditz wasn't the only tricky son she had, Gine thought as they rushed each other again. He'd only gone times 2. This time when they broke apart, Jinyu was nearly out of breath and bleeding. Kakarot hadn't even broken a sweat. What? What number do you put me at now? Kakarot asked, smirking. Jinyu touched his scouter and his face contorted in horror. T200,000? Impossible. You're a scion. Scions aren't this strong. Kakarot shrugged nonchalantly. Maybe you just ain't met the right ones. Jinyu growled, but then his demeanor softened into thoughtfulness. Perhaps. He said softly. Perhaps you're special. Then do you give up? Ha! Hardly. Your strength does intrigue me, though, scion, Jinyu said. He took off his scouter and tossed it high into the air. It intrigues me greatly. I'd like a better look at it. Jinyu plunged his hand deep into his own chest. He gasped, coughed up blood, and said 2 words. Change now. A beam of light shot out from Jinyu's body and entered Kakarot's, and as it did, something in Gine's awareness flipped over queasily. The light flickered and went out, leaving the two of them exactly as they had been, Jinyu bleeding from his chest, Kakarot floating proudly in front of him. But Gine could tell everything was different. Well, Kakarot said, lifting his arms and studying them. It's been a while since I had hair. I guess I'll have to start shaving again. Guh. Jinyu gasped, nearly falling out of the sky. Wah! Why am I, over there? Gine lifted her hands to her mouth in horror. Even Bardock hadn't been sure if the rumor that Captain Jinyu was a body snatcher was true. Kakarot, no, Jinyu, reached out and caught the scouter as it fell back down, fixing it to his ear. For a blood-freezing moment he looked more like Bardock than he ever had in his life, but then he smiled, a small cruel thing that looked nothing like Bardock or Kakarot, and Captain Ginyu fixed his eyes on Gine. I don't suppose you'd be interested in helping me test out this new body? Gine blasted him with a Kamehameha. He countered it with an energy blast of his own, and even though it was sloppier than anything Kakarot would have done, he was so strong it more than made up the difference. Overwhelmed, she abandoned her ki blast to get out of the way, but she wasn't quick enough. The beam hit her side, burning her flesh and knocking her sideways. Ginyu was on her in an instant, pummeling her with Kakarot's fists, overwhelming her with Kakarot's strength. She fell back, too injured to fight properly. But even if she'd been whole, she couldn't have given her strikes the killing force they needed. A part of her simply wouldn't accept that this wasn't Kakarot. He smiled. This is my favorite part, you know, he said in a stage whisper. When it still hasn't sunk in yet. Screaming with rage, Gine flung herself at him. He laughed, catching her strike easily, and she spun around and hurled a roundhouse kick at his head. He caught that too. Quick as lightning he used his grip on her foot to spin her around in midair and fling her to the ground, her impact punching a crater into the ground. Fighting her way free of the dirt she saw Chi-Chi, Krillin and Gohan standing near Vegeta, all looking up at the man who was not Kakarot. Chi-Chi. Kakarot gasped from his wounded, purple body. Why'd you come back here? What in tarnation is going on? Chi-Chi demanded, looking wildly from Gine, to Ginyu, to Kakarot, and back. Why were you two fightin'? That's not Kakarot. Gine shouted, as Ginyu streaked through the sky to punch her in the face. Her head slammed into the ground again, stars dancing in her vision. One of them was particularly bright, and it did not fade as the rest of them did. Through her sunglasses Gine could see the big sun and the two little ones that lit this planet, but directly above her there was a fourth light in the sky, smaller but more piercing. A fourth sun. No, a moon. Vegeta's artificial moon, designed for only one thing. She ripped the sunglasses off her face and, for the first time in over a decade, looked at the moon. It started with a sensation like a sunburn on the inside of her tail. Then the itching, prickling feeling spread to her whole body, which began to expand. She spared a thought to mourn for the dress Grandpa Gohan had made before it was ripped to shreds. Hair sprouted from every inch of her body, her face lengthened, and her teeth sharpened and grew. Ginyu desperately looked up at the moon as well, but when nothing happened he felt behind him for a tail and found only a scar. Damn it, he screamed, right before Gine's building-sized palm slapped him to the ground. He struggled, and shot a ki blast at her face, but she was more powerful than him, more powerful than Ginyu. More powerful than her son. There was no one on this pathetic mudball more powerful than her. Gine felt the joyous Oozuru battle tide rise within her and ignored it with effort. She curled her giant fingers and picked Ginyu up, squeezing him tight. Switch back now, she bellowed with a voice that made trees bend backward. Ginyu snarled and powered up, but he wasn't used to Kakarot's body, and he certainly couldn't use Kaioken. She held him in place easily. Far below her, Gine heard Chi-Chi say hesitantly, Kakarot? It's me, Chi-Chi, Kakarot said mournfully. But. Out of the corner of her eye Gine saw Chi-Chi reach for her husband, then pull her hands back before making contact. You're hideous, she wailed. I can't take you to parent-teacher conferences like this. What will the neighbors think? It's okay, Mom, Gohan said consolingly. He's like Grandpa Ox now. What on earth do you mean? He has horns. Chi-Chi burst into tears. Gine bared her giant teeth at Ginyu. Switch back or I won't hesitate to kill you, she growled. Ha! Ginyu spat, still trying to get free from her grip. You're bluffing. You don't want him trapped in that body forever, do you? Gine closed her eyes so she didn't have to look at Kakarot's face and squeezed until she felt ribs pop. Ginyu bellowed weakly. It sounded like she'd punctured a lung. She reminded herself they still had a senzu bean, but then she remembered Kakarot had given it to Gohan and felt sick. I am a scion, she said. Do not underestimate what I'm capable of. She knew, as any other scion would and as any non-scion would not, that even the most timorous and unimpressive voice sounds like the gods themselves thundering from on high when spoken with vocal cords measured in yards. If she'd been in her normal form he would have laughed at her pathetic attempt to sound intimidating. Instead he looked nervous for the first time. If you kill me Lord Frisia will come looking for you, he gasped. We've got ships, she growled. We can run. You think you can run from Lord Frisia? Jinyu chuckled wetly. Many have thought the same, and they all met the same fate. He stared at her, contorting her son's face into a nasty smile. She stared back, her horror only looking fearsome on her huge, elongated face. Change back, she said again, or I'll kill you. Jinyu opened his mouth, but instead of more taunts or bargaining, a glow started at the back of his throat. Too late Gine realized what he was doing, and she tried to fling him away. But it was no good. As if in slow motion she watched the beam of light make its way unerringly toward her. All she had time for was a curse, and then a flash of light blinded her, but the kaleidoscopic afterimage on the back of her eyelids had a silhouette in the center of it. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear her vision, and found Jinyu's original body floating in midair just above her clenched hands, between her and Kakarot. Gine took only a second to reach out with her energy to make sure, yes. The one in her hands was Kakarot, and the one above him was Jinyu. They were back to normal. Lowering her hands to get her son out of the way, Gine opened her mouth and shot a white-hot beam of light at the horned figure, which dissolved instantly. For a moment all that was left of Jinyu was a faint scream, and then even that faded to nothing. From where he was cupped in Gine's giant hands, Kakarot gave a weak cry of celebration. You did it, Ma. She gently uncurled her fingers and held her son up to her face. Kakarot. I'm so sorry. Are you alright? I tried not to hurt you too badly. Sakai, Ma, he whispered, waving a hand vaguely. It wasn't me. We'll get you fixed up, just hold on. Chi-Chi. She turned to find Chi-Chi and Gohan already flying up to Kakarot. Beyond them she could see Krillin keeping a close eye on Vegeta, but the prince was paying him no mind. Instead, he was staring slack-jawed at her. She looked away. Chi-Chi, where's your first aid kit? She said. Is that really Kakarot? Chi-Chi asked, approaching her husband with caution. He smiled at her around the blood on his face. It's me, he said. I might still scare the neighbors, but at least I don't have horns no more. Laughing, Chi-Chi flung her arms around her husband and carried him down to the ground. Gohan stayed hovering in the air, and Gine realized he was wearing oversized sunglasses. He lowered them to reveal wide, curious eyes. Grandma, this is your Oozuru form? She wondered what he was thinking. He'd never seen her like this before, never gone Oozuru himself. Gine knew how fearsome she looked, and she probably looked worse with all the blood matting her fur, but Gohan didn't seem afraid or disgusted at all. Yes, she said in as quiet a roar as she could manage. It's amazing, he said, flying around her to get a better look. You're clearly an ape in structure, but you have a tail. Though, I suppose there's no reason for you to conform to Earth-based taxonomy. But in that case, it's incredible that you look so much like Earth primates in the first place. Of course, that naturally begs the question of why scions look so much like humans. He trailed off, muttering to himself, and if things were normal she would have tousled his hair with one giant finger and teased him for sounding like a textbook. Instead she said, Gohan, can you help your mother bandage up your father? Oh, he said, his face lighting up. I have a better idea. Come on everyone, let's get Dad to Dend. He flew toward his parents, but then stopped and turned back to Gine. Can you change back, Grandma? He asked. She looked up at the artificial moon, still hanging in the air, and then down at Vegeta. Make it go away, she growled at him. He curled his lip at her. I don't see why I should do you any favors. Krillin shot him a disgusted look, then held up his open palm at the moon and blasted it with an energy beam. It exploded, and Gine felt the wild energy that sustained her Oozuru form dissipate. She shrank back down, and then felt her legs buckle beneath her. All her wounds from before the transformation had expanded in size along with her, and they had continued bleeding Oozuru amounts of blood. Now she was dizzy and thirsty and disoriented. Gohan swooped under her arm and held her upright. I got you, Grandma, he said. Good boy, Gohan, Gine said faintly. She looked across the field of mud her battle with Jinyu had kicked up, to find Chi-Chi holding Kakarot in a bridal carry. Krillin was standing between them and Vegeta, though strangely his face was turned away and the back of his head was bright, blushing red. Oh. Gine looked down at herself and chuckled. She looked back up, ready to ask Chi-Chi if she had anything she could use to cover herself, but Vegeta's gaze caught her attention and she straightened. There was nothing erotic about mere nudity to a scion, so she knew that wasn't what made him stare. But he couldn't seem to take his eyes off her even so. He seemed angry. disbelieving. Gine could tell he hadn't moved once during the entire fight. Scram, or you'll get more of the same, she growled, and Vegeta rocked back on his heels, still cradling the hand she'd crushed. After a moment spent teetering on the knife edge between self-preservation and stupidity, Vegeta chose self-preservation and flew away. The five of them flew slowly over blue fields and green water until they came to a cave. Bulma and Yamcha stood outside, waving, though Yamcha wheezed and turned away when he caught sight of Gine. She was mildly surprised to find a capsule house set up in the cave. They entered, and Chi-Chi lay Kakarot down on the couch, while Gine sank with relief onto a chair. Bulma opened a closet and pulled out an extra dress of Chi-Chi's, and Gine was so weak she had to let her pull it over her head. Once she was dressed, Gine noticed an extra person in the room, a small green childlike figure with antennae like Cammy's. He was bending over Kakarot with his brow furrowed in concentration, and as she watched, Kakarot's breathing grew easier and the lines on his face eased. In less than a minute her son leaped to his feet, slapping his ribs in amazement. Good as new. You're like a walking senzu bean, little guy. What's your name? Dad, this is Dend. Gohan said joyfully. We met him here on Namek. Dend, can you heal my grandma too? Of course, the little Namekian said. He trundled over to her and bowed. Ma'am, it's a pleasure to meet you. She bowed her head in response, utterly smitten. He was almost as well-mannered as Gohan and just as cute. Dend raised his hands, and a sensation like sunlight suffused her whole body, relaxing her muscles and easing her pain. She sighed. I think the Grand Elder must have known this would happen, Dend said. Gohan turned from where he was being smothered by Chi-Chi. What do you mean? Dend frowned at his hands, still hovering in front of Gine. I haven't healed anyone who really needed it yet. This is the first time it's been something serious. I didn't understand why he would unlock my potential to do this if there wasn't a good reason. This must have been it. You mean like he can see the future? Yamcha asked. Dend shook his head, then lowered his hands. Gine felt strong, relaxed, completely back to normal. Better, even. Dend continued to look at his hands. No, he can't do that. It's just, sometimes, he knows what needs to be done. That sounds like Cammy, Kakarot said, and at the exact same moment both he and Gine turned to the others. Did you? We're there. Gohan wriggled out of Chi-Chi's grip and stood nearly on tiptoes with excitement. Dad, Grandma, we did it. They did have Dragon Balls and we found them and we brought back Tien and Kaiatsu and Cammy. They're alive again. Kakarot whooped. He picked up Chi-Chi by the waist and whirled her around, both of them laughing. Gine grabbed Gohan and rocked him back and forth, speechless with joy. Over his head she could see Yamcha and Bulma leaning on each other happily, and Krillin grinned at them all, laughing in relief. Even Dend was smiling. They were alive. Cammy, Tien and Kaiatsu, back again, her failure undone and everything as it should be. Gine sighed, feeling the hand that had been squeezing her heart for the last 2 months finally let go. Gohan was much better at storytelling than his father. In articulate language and in chronological order he described to Gine and Kakarot their journey to Namek, how kind the Namekians had been, the trials they'd faced to earn the Dragon Balls from each village elder, calling up the dragon and making their 3 wishes, and then, heartbreakingly, how Vegeta had shown up and chased them into hiding before slaughtering 3 villages, seemingly just for fun. At this part Gohan looked Den solemnly in the eye and said, "We'll use our Dragon Balls to wish them back." Shining joy lit up the young Namekian's face, and he clasped Gohan's hands in wordless gratitude. Gine's heart was so light she felt it might float away. "Where are your parents?" she asked him as they packed up the capsule house in preparation for traveling to the Grand Elder's mountain. "The Grand Elder is my parent," he explained. "Namekians are hermaphrodites," Gohan supplied, hoisting his backpack onto his shoulders. "They possess both the male and the female reproductive organs, though from what Den's told me I suspect a form of parthenogenesis is the most common." He went on, mostly to himself, and Krillin sidled up to Gine and whispered. "Are you getting any of this?" "No," she whispered back. "But isn't he adorable? Though I saw at least one species of frog that supported this theory, so I definitely have more research to do," Gohan finished proudly, and Gine picked him up and nuzzled him. "Grandma," he mumbled, embarrassed and pleased. "My turn," Kakarot said, snatching him away and giving him a nuzzle of his own before hoisting him up on his shoulders. "Where to, son?" Gohan pointed. "That way." Gine glanced at Dend, who was gazing up at Gohan on Kakarot's shoulders with a wistful look. Would you like a ride too? She asked. His face brightened. Yes, ma'am, he said. I mean, that is, if you don't mind. Now, none of this, ma'am, business, Gine said as she picked him up and put him on her shoulders. You can call me Grandma too, alright? Thank you, Grandma, he said shyly. Gine contemplated taking him home with her. The Grand Elder was an enormous old Namekian attended by the strongest warrior Gine had ever met outside the Frisia force. Gohan made the introductions with all the gravity of an interstellar diplomat despite being 3 feet tall and wearing a tinier version of his father's GI. And this is my father and grandmother, he said. Gine and Kakarot bowed to the old Namekian, who smiled. I must thank you, he said. His energy reminded her of Kami's, deep and heavy and divine. But the smile he gave them put her in mind of no one so much as Grandpa Gohan, warm and kind and fatherly. You have saved us from a great threat. We are in your debt. I mean, it's kind of our fault they were here in the first place, Bulma muttered. The Grand Elder chuckled. You meant no harm. My thanks still stand, Gine. Kakarot. Come stand next to me. I have gifts for you. Gine and Kakarot noticed the others give each other knowing, excited looks, but no one said anything as Kakarot stepped forward. The Grand Elder placed his hand on the top of Kakarot's head, and for a moment nothing happened. Then Kakarot began to glow, and his power, already immense, expanded. Whoa, he said as the Grand Elder lifted his hand away. What was that? I feel incredible. Thanks, old-timer. That, he looked suddenly worried. That didn't hurt you, giving me that, did it? I mean, you're so old you probably don't have a lot to spare, and that was a lot. The Grand Elder smiled. I merely unlocked that which lay sleeping inside you. It has no bearing on my life force. I am fine. Kakarot frowned. That witch. He can unlock all the energy someone's not using, Dad. Gohan explained. He did it for all of us. That's why we're so much stronger now. I was wondering about that, Kakarot said. Then he gasped, and turned to Gine, eyes shining. This is great, Ma. You can get even stronger now. Gine's heart sank. He still didn't understand. I don't. Please, the Grand Elder said kindly. Come closer, child. She did, reluctantly. Standing this close she could see the deep lines in his face, some from worry and grief, others from laughter. He was older than Kami, and bigger than the Ox King. She wondered if he was some kind of god. Whatever he was good as Vegeta was evil. It did not make him any less intimidating. I don't really want more power, sir, she said. Not that I'm not grateful for the offer, but... He opened his eyes and looked at her, and she forgot what she'd been about to say. His dark eyes were full of understanding and wisdom, but they also held sorrow. Sorrow for her. You have a heart that craves peace, Gine of Earth, he said. I, too, crave peace, but you and I both understand that peace is often purchased with blood. I'm afraid I do not offer you this gift for purely unselfish reasons. I sense there is an even greater evil that will soon befall my people, and we will need all the help we can find. I would ask for your help in facing this threat. Gine stared at him in confusion for several moments. Then with dawning horror she realized there was only one thing he could possibly be referring to, Frisia. No. She whispered. Oh, yes, came a mocking voice from the doorway. They all spun around to find Vegeta stepping into the house. He still cradled his ruined hand against his chest, but his smile was wide and wicked. You're right, you horrific excuse for a mollusk. Frisia will come here. I don't know when, but I guarantee you he will, and when he does, he'll kill every last one of you. Get out of here, Vegeta, Kakarot said sternly. Vegeta sneered. I would, but I happen to notice that the two of you look remarkably well considering the beating you just took. I want whatever it is that has done this, and then I want that one, he nodded at the Grand Elder, to give me the same power he gave you, and you will do all of this because if you don't, Frisia's going to slaughter you all. Gohan had stepped in front of Dend at the mention of healing, and Gine watched Vegeta put 2 and 2 together. The shrimp, eh? He held out his hand. Get to healing, boy. You're in no position to barge in here and make demands, Bulma informed him, hands on hips. Yamcha stood behind her, arms folded over his chest and nodding along. Go away. Shoo. Vegeta raised an eyebrow at her. You've got a lot of spunk for a silly-colored weakling. I'll make whatever demands I damn well please, woman, because I am the prince and it's my power that's going to save you all from Frieza once he gets here. No one moved. Vegeta growled and pointed his good hand at Dend. How about this? You give me what I want or I kill the shrimp and then no one gets any healing. Nail twitched, but before he could even uncross his arms Kakarot had zipped up to Vegeta and taken his good hand in a crushing grip. Vegeta winced, but held his ground. The two of them glared at each other, neither one backing down. Kakarot was fierce and full of fury, and Gine felt the breath leave her lungs. There were times, occasionally as a boy and more often now as a man, when Kakarot would turn to her with a half-completed expression, or his face would fall into just the right mix of shadows, and there would be Bardock, just for a split second. It never lasted. Kakarot was far too open and friendly, Bardock far too arrogant and apathetic, for him to ever truly be mistaken for his father despite their identical looks. But right now, facing down a fellow scion, vying for dominance, fury kindled in his eyes, Kakarot looked just like his father. Vegeta looked away first, but not in defeat. Instead he looked at Gine. Tell me you think you have a chance against him without me. You know Frieza as I do. Go ahead. Say you don't need my help. Gine bit her lip, and Vegeta's smile returned. That's what I thought. Tell you what, I'll promise to be a good little boy for however long it takes Frieza to get here. I won't even kill anyone. We'll be allies. How does that sound? Kakarot looked at her, questioning. Gine chewed at her lower lip, trying to see a way out, but she couldn't. Fine. She threw up her hands in disgust. Fine. Dend, just. No, wait, hang on a minute. Krillin interjected, earning himself a glare from a triumphant Vegeta. Frieza's not here yet, right? He doesn't know who we are. We could just run. We'll leave now, quickly, and we won't tell you guys where we're going. He turned to Nail and the Grand Elder. You can tell him a bunch of aliens you've never seen before killed those guys and then left, and you don't know anything about it. He turned to Vegeta, frowning. You can stay here and fight him if you want. Just leave us out of this. Vegeta stared nonplussed at Krillin for a very long time. Then he threw back his head and laughed, a heartfelt belly laugh that went on for even longer. You're joking, he gasped when he came up for air. He looked at Krillin, who was still glaring at him. You're not joking. By the gods, I've never met someone so stupid. Do you really think that if Frieza comes here and finds the rotting corpses of his best men, all he's going to do is ask a few polite questions and then leave? He looked around, making eye contact with all of them. This planet was marked for death the moment I set foot on it. Your only chance for survival now is with my help, but I can't do that with a broken hand. He held out the offending limb toward Dend, who was still cowering behind Gohan. For a long moment no one moved. Come here, young scion. The Grand Elder's voice was mild, but carrying. With a meaningful look at Dend, Vegeta took his place at the Grand Elder's side. The old Namekian placed his hand on Vegeta's head, the lines of his face furrowing deeper in concentration. Grand Elder, Nail said tensely. Peace, Nail, the Grand Elder said. Minutes passed, and Vegeta tapped his foot impatiently. Get on with it, old man. I see, the Grand Elder said to himself. There is a chance. A small one, but it's there. A chance for what? Vegeta snapped. The Grand Elder didn't answer. Instead he smiled and gave Vegeta's head a gentle pat, like he was a small child. Vegeta flinched away, disgusted. What will you do with this power, if I should give it to you? The Grand Elder asked. Ah, you wish to bargain, Vegeta began, but the Grand Elder held up his hand. No, he said. I am merely asking you a question, and depending on your answer I may or may not unlock your sleeping power, though I will warn you, there is not as much of it as you think. Vegeta's lip curled. Don't play games with me, old man. You want to know if I'll use my powers for good or some such nonsense. But you already know that I won't. I'll use my strength in whatever manner I please, and right now it just so happens that the way I intend to use it aligns with your survival. He bared his teeth at the Grand Elder, and the energy that poured off Nail as he did so was enough to give Gine the shivers. Vegeta went on, his voice lowering to a hiss. As for how much power lies sleeping inside me, don't presume to inform me of its limits. You can't even begin to fathom what I'm capable of. I am Vegeta, the prince of all scions, and as such I have the capacity to become the most powerful being this universe has ever seen. The Grand Elder listened to all of this with grave patience, and when Vegeta was done he sighed. There is a spark of something in you, Scion. I don't know if it is goodness or not. It's been buried so long and so completely that it could simply be the imaginings of an old man who would like to believe no one is truly irredeemable. It's possible unlocking your hidden potential will be the rush of wind that blows out this tiny spark forever. But it is equally possible that being forced to confront the truth may be the catalyst to ignite it. Certainly, he sighed again, we are in need of your help. Vegeta growled. Then get on with it. Dend, my son, the Grand Elder said. Will you heal him? The boy's pale, conflicted face nearly broke Gine's heart. But he killed so many of us, he protested. You can't unlock his power, Grand Elder, you can't. I agree, Nail said. He can't possibly be the lesser of two evils. Besides, what if he sides with this Frieza? Both Gine and Vegeta scoffed at the same time, and then glared at each other. The Grand Elder chuckled. As you see, he said. Dend, I know this is a difficult thing I ask of you. But I sense that even Vegeta has his part to play. Who knows? Perhaps your ability to heal may have been awakened for just such a moment as this. Dend shook his head slowly, tears leaking from the corners of his eyes. No, he said, his voice breaking. It was the Earthlings. They're supposed to be the ones who will save us. Not him. Gine felt eyes on her and found Gohan, his arms still around Den's shoulders. He was giving her the most serious look he'd ever given her in his life. Grandma, he said. Is Frieza really that bad? How she wanted to say no. Yes, she whispered. Yes, he is. Gohan leaned down and whispered something in Den's ear that made the boy scrub the tears from his eyes and lift his chin in defiance. Glaring at Vegeta, he lifted his hands, which illuminated with the soft glow of healing. An answering glow lit up Vegeta's body, and in moments the multitude of bruises and cuts dotting his body were gone. He stripped off his glove and flexed his now perfect hand, grunting in satisfaction. Then without a glance at Dend he turned to the Grand Elder. Now, do it. Gravely, the Grand Elder placed his hand on Vegeta's head once again. It began to glow, and so did Vegeta, his energy expanding and flowing upwards in a darkly joyful dance. The corners of his mouth curled up as he felt what was happening. Oh, yes, he shouted. This is it. I am the legend. He strode to the entrance of the house, but before he crossed the threshold Kakarot cut him off, forcing Vegeta to stop short or risk running into him. Remember, Vegeta, he said. You promised not to hurt anyone. Vegeta rolled his eyes. And I won't. Kakarot leaned in close, giving him a glare. Good. Because if you cross us, it'll be more than just your tail that gets cut off. Vegeta sneered, but it was with quite a bit less bluster that he finally left the house. Gine, said the Grand Elder. She turned back to him, dreading what he was going to say. My offer still stands. Will you accept my help and become stronger? 2 hours. That was all the time she'd had from the end of the last life or death conflict to now. She had been so happy those 2 hours. She had already begun thinking about where to plant some extra squash because Gohan was a growing boy and he loved squash. She'd wondered how to set up interplanetary playdates. Now a hand closed around her heart once again, this time with a sense of finality. Gine closed her eyes and said, yes. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.